Hello, I'm here today with Joseph Notice, who is a solicitor in the residential property team, and we're going to talk today about equity release, which is a scheme whereby people over 55 can release a lump sum from their property for either updating their property or so that they can live on that money. And Joseph's going to tell us all about it today, aren't you?
Yep, absolutely. So you have two main types of equity release mortgage. You have the lifetime mortgage and the home reversion plan. So the lifetime mortgage is the most common equity release mortgage you'll see, and that's essentially where you are able to borrow a lump sum of money from the equity in your property whilst retaining the right to live in that property. There are a few key elements of this agreement. So essentially, you don't pay monthly interest or monthly payments. The interest just accrues over the duration of the loan, and then after the triggering event, the loan is repaid. So the common triggering event is either the homeowner's death or if the homeowner goes into care. So that's the first option. The other option, which isn't as common but still has its pros, is the home reversion plan. And the home reversion plan allows the homeowner to sell a portion or all of their property whilst retaining a right to live in that property, and receive either a lump sum of money or monthly instalments of cash. And again, that loan isn't repaid until the death of the surviving homeowner. And at that point, the share that the equity release company owns in the mortgage, and whether it's 40%, 50%, is just paid on the sale of the property.
So how does equity release work?
So essentially with equity release, the first stage is, and what we would always recommend, is that you contact an independent financial advisor. So they'll firstly explain the different types of products and what's available to you, and will clarify whether that is something that you should pursue or not, considering your plan for the future, your goals and what you want to do. So that's always the first step, because it's important that you understand what you're entering into and if it's right for you, because it isn't always right for you. But once you've got past that step, if you do wish to proceed, the next step is to get a value for the property. This is because an equity release loan is dependent on the value. It's taken from a percentage of the value of the property. So you will contact a qualified surveyor, get an accurate value for what your property is worth. Once you have that, and if you are happy with the terms of the loan, this is the point where you would contact a solicitor. The solicitor would review the mortgage documentation and ensure that you understand and are happy with all of the details therein. They will then meet with you in person to discuss everything and make sure that it's the best thing for you. Provided you're happy, that's when you will sign documentation. At that point, the solicitor will contact the lender and will receive the funds on your behalf and then forward them to you on the completion date that's agreed.
If I'm under 55, can I still release equity in my property?
So equity release, the scheme in general is targeted to the ages of 55 and over, so that really isn't possible for you. But that's not to say that there aren't other ways to generate some additional income or some funds, depending on what you want to do. So we would always recommend you perhaps go down the route of a remortgage if you wanted additional financing, and really just speak to a financial advisor and discuss what your options are. But equity release isn't targeted to the under 55s.
So how much money can I release from my property, and does it take a long time for the process to go through?
So with a lifetime mortgage equity release, you typically can release 20 to 60% equity in the property, and that's just dependent upon what's agreed with the equity release company. It factors in your age, your health, value of the property, things of that nature. And in terms of how long it will take, typically between 8 to 12 weeks. But again, that just depends on the lender, their requirements, and how quick they are providing the paperwork. But yeah, typically within that time.
So what are the advantages and disadvantages of equity release?
So some of the advantages, firstly, it's tax-free cash, and it can be used to supplement your income. So that's the main advantage, really. But another advantage is that you don't have to sell your property. You can remain in your property while still benefiting from the equity that's in that property. So it kind of allows you to get the best of both worlds in that situation. The last key thing also is that the amount that you owe will never exceed the value in the property. So you'll never be in a position where there's negative equity in your property. You always have the amount needed to repay the equity release mortgage when the triggering event occurs. So the first disadvantage is that the interest is calculated daily, so the interest can quite quickly compound and become quite a higher sum than the amount you initially borrowed. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. It's really important that you understand that the amount that you owe in 10 years' time is going to be considerably higher. But the good thing is the equity release companies will give you a plan of what the loan and what is owed looks like after 5 years, after 10 years, so you get a real good idea of what you're going to be paying off when the time comes. Another thing to consider is that you are leaving less for your beneficiaries when it comes to inheritance, because that loan will have to be paid off before any beneficiaries benefit from any of the remaining estate or money that you can give them. So that's another thing to consider as well. So the last disadvantage, which is really important to consider, is that the money received from an equity release mortgage can affect your eligibility for means-tested benefits. So again, it's really important that you're always in touch with financial advisors and also solicitors that deal with people who are at the end of life and estate planning, so that you know the effects of getting this increased amount of income before you proceed.
So thank you, Joseph. That was really informative. If you're thinking of equity release, then please do ring us if you've got any questions, and we can help. You will need independent legal advice, and we can assist with that. And you just need to go to your equity release provider or your mortgage broker and let them know that we'll be assisting, and we can all work together. There are lots of details on our website which might help you as well.